As the ocean of my knowledge expands, so does the shore of my ignorance. So जितना सीखते हैं उतना पता लगता जाता है कि कितना कुछ अभी नहीं पता है.
I will never know everything. And that has made me very happy with my imperfection.
You'd say that affirmations would work if you have a plan.
I grew up on a steady diet of being brutally beaten up, a lot of shaming, a lot of verbal, mental, emotional abuse.
It's easy to believe that there's something higher than me because there's nature. But to believe somebody has my back, that requires a leap of faith. Spiritual science is a science. You can't study biology and then hope to know physics.
The external goals will only help you externally. But if you want to feel fulfilled inside, happy and joyful, then you have to go inwards to discover your soul goals. It's all within us. Physical strength, mental strength, everything comes from within you if you're willing to step out of your comfort zone. Hold the fear doors, knock on your fear doors, then there is light on the other side. Take small action steps in that direction. There are possibilities and you can do anything as that you want.
And you have a third book, Unfettered.
That
right?
is my baby, truly my baby, how I feel today.
I've read the book and I think it's the only book that you'll probably need. How did Navy happen?
Okay.
Among the first batch of Indian women, please tell us
Yeah.
precisely what it was. Welcome back to the show. This conversation is with the first female naval officer in the history of Indian Navy. She's also been a runner who's won many podiums. She's been a triathlete who's completed Ironman 70.3, and she's been a coach, a speaker, and someone who's authored 3 books. Her latest book is called Unfettered, and I believe that's the only book you'll ever need to figure out your soul goals and the tools you need to achieve them. This book also happens to feature 12 stories of inspiring women, and one of them happens to be of my mother. Tanuja is now a health and life transformation coach, but this conversation is not about tips, tricks, and hacks. This is about her life journey. We watch videos of people who have a lot of wise things to say, like there's a lot of profound wisdom in their talks. I often wonder, how did they really gain it? Like, I'm pretty sure it's not through watching videos and reading books alone. It is the kind of life that they've lived, the challenges that they've had, and numerous times that life punched them in the face, knocked them down, and left them with no choice but to get back up again and fight one more time. This, I believe, is how greatness is achieved, how ultras are found, which is exactly why I spend time getting to know the person and where they're coming from. The bold naval officer that we see, the podium finisher girl that we see, and the Ironman triathlete that we see. What does the person behind all of this look like? कहीं ऐसा तो नहीं है they had a troubled childhood, or they were underconfident, or they were pushed against the wall? Episode 52. Hi Tanu, welcome to the Find Your Ultra podcast.
Thank you so much. It's so good to be here.
So good to see you.
Likewise.
Yeah.
Vipin.
You've been a friend, a family friend for many years now. And you, of course, hold a very special place in my life because you've helped my mother so much. And she still speaks so highly of you.
Thank you.
Yeah, her life was
Thank you.
impacted so positively. So, yeah, I've been wanting to have you on the podcast for a while. There is a journey that I have also witnessed you going through, from Navy to a runner to a triathlete to a health and wellness coach. And that also now has taken a different shape, right? Let's get to know you. Let's cover your childhood. Where were you born and stuff? Take us to your life leading up to the Navy.
Okay. This is a tough one, but yes, it needs to be spoken about. So I'm from Agra, and my childhood wasn't a bed of roses. It was when I was in grade 3, tragedy struck. I lost my infant brother to electrocution, and my mother lost her mind, and she was sent packing to a mental asylum. So, me and my 2 siblings, we were motherless. And life wasn't that easy. My father was a staunch authoritarian, very authoritative, and he had a very short fuse. He didn't know how to manage the 3 kids. And in fact, he believed that shaming, yelling, and corporal punishment like thrashing were the chief ingredients in effective parenting. So I grew up on a steady diet of being brutally beaten up, as were my siblings, and a lot of shaming, a lot of verbal, mental, emotional abuse. And I am no longer ashamed in saying that a lot of extensive sexual abuse. I grew up as somebody with a very low sense of self, a very low self worth, low self confidence, and somebody who felt very small. And if you look at the lifestyle, because we would be talking about the healthy lifestyle, healthy. So, as far as the healthy lifestyle went at that time, I would say that I had like nutrition was missing totally in from my life because we didn't have anybody cooking for us. We didn't know where the next meal was coming from because with my father's temperament, nobody and no cook would stick into our house and cook for us. So that was missing. I even remember there were times when there was no meal, no dinners, and we would have a dinner of ice cream. So that was where nutrition stood. Then there was no exercise, movement in my life. I hated exercise. In fact, even if I had to walk 100 meters, I would huff and puff and sulk. And then, as part of a healthy lifestyle, we would talk about, say, affection, warmth, effective communication. They were totally missing, as you would understand by now. And then, talking about role models in my life, there were no positive role models to have as a backup. So I grew up as somebody very frazzled and fragmented. I just had no foundation. In effect, it was like all the foundational pillars of my life that a child needs for an all round development and overall growth were absolutely missing. So it's no surprise that I grew up with a lot of, say, I was vulnerable, gullible, I was physically timid, emotionally very low in the sense emotionally totally fragmented, and I grew up with a lot of insecurities about people, about myself, and huge irrational fears such as fear of the dark, fear of people being happy with me, like people not liking me because all the time I had to please to get the basics done, fear of public speaking because speaking your heart, speaking what you want was not appreciated. So there were a whole lot of fears. And it's no surprise that I grew up with a very low sense of worth. So that's about my childhood.
Wow. I have to admit, I'm a little shaken up. I've known you all these years and I never knew about this. I never, like, it, I didn't have an idea of all that you're telling me. It's,
Yeah.
my heart's a little full. It's, that's amazing. Like, I have even more respect.
Thank you. But I got the confidence to talk about this part of me, say this trauma or whatever I had packed inside as being a shameful part of me, so that I wanted to be, I want to release it bit by bit and I want to own it all. I want to, I'm no longer ashamed. So I make it a point that I talk about it. It's a part of me,
Hmm.
which has helped me grow in some way.
That's amazing. I'm so glad we are talking about this. But before we leave this part of your life, tell me a little bit more. So you said you lost your infant brother to
Electrocution.
okay, and how old were you at the time?
I was in class 3, so may have been
How many siblings you
6.
have?
I have 2 younger siblings, a sister and then a younger brother.
Sister and a younger brother.
Yes.
So you said your mother was put into a mental asylum.
Yes.
What was the condition she was diagnosed with?
She was suffering from schizophrenia. She could not accept that her say her infant son was gone, and you understand how much pressure would have been there at that time to finally have a boy child,
Yeah.
male child, and losing it. I'm just assuming that she must have had a lot to deal with,
Mhm.
and she never accepted that her son is gone.
She developed schizophrenia only after the incident, or did
Yes,
she have
yes, of course. And she
completely
never
after the?
cried. She had this picture all the time that after that he's somewhere around. She couldn't accept. Basically, it wasn't that her son was gone. So it is that stage when you are delusional and you have stories in your mind as to that it's all good and everybody's around. Then she was imagining she was a child. Sometimes she would imagine that her parents are still around. So she
Yeah.
had lost it. It was very difficult situation getting.
I've experienced this with a close friend who was diagnosed with schizophrenia in our student days, and it was very tough to deal with. I've seen that.
Mm.
Is your mother still around?
No, she's no more.
Okay, okay. And your father, you said.
My parents are no more.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And what else do you remember around that time of your childhood? Like when you sisters were getting out of this, trying to get out of this. What else stands out for you from that time?
If you ask me, there aren't very many happy memories. I just remember myself as being very closed, being very timid, being very scared of everything, everyone, and not getting very good vibes. My father was, say, the only child of his parents, and he had 8, 9 step siblings.
Mm.
So I just didn't have a I don't have happy memories, but at the same time somewhere whenever I felt that I was going through abuse, now I can see that I was very protective towards my sister, younger sister. So I just have a feeling that I was always, and now that we've spoken, now that she's aware of it, she said I'm amazed because I have had a very safe childhood.
You're the eldest?
I'm the eldest, then is my sister, and then my brother.
Wow. Okay. What's a part of that era that you found very hard to get over?
It's absolutely what I need to say is that the patriarchal system in where I grew up and the fear around the males, whether it was their short fuse or their, I mean, having no shame in sexually abusing women or girls. So, all that has actually, for a very long time, I had that rage towards that attitude of the males during my growing up.
Mm.
I think this is what, whenever I think of people in my life at that time, there's a little, now I'm feeling much better because I've released a lot of it bit by bit. I've had that rage.
You can say all of these things with a smile. It's amazing, Dhanan. So, what did you study after school?
So after school, I did my graduation in political science, economics, English, and history. But then I post graduated in English literature, and also am an MBA in from Jamnalal Bajaj, Mumbai. Yeah.
आपकी पढ़ाई पूरी हुई नहीं है अभी तक भी आप ये
नहीं.
continuously studying,
I
right?
am
Still.
studying because
Mm.
I've
Yeah.
done a few certifications
Yeah, every time
recently.
I speak with you, you're on to something or the other. Like, अब BA पढ़ रही हो, like.
So I have that quest, that unquenchable desire to keep learning, to keep getting certified. I want to learn and learn, which was, I think, lacking in my childhood, probably. So I have this lifelong learning thing in me that
Yeah.
I should keep getting into something, learn about different things.
Yeah.
But then I cannot be spread thin. So I try to focus on my core strength, that is coaching, that is life coaching and health coaching. So I try to do all the certifications
So it's a
around
good
that.
time to ask this question then. People feel, and that with learning comes great pain also, right? Ignorance is sometimes bliss. जितना नहीं पता होता उतना ठीक है, नहीं पता आपको. But as you learn more, the people who are very learned aren't necessarily the happiest as well, right? And also there is this constant feeling of not knowing enough. So there's this saying, this quote by I don't know whom. It goes something like, as the ocean of my knowledge expands, so does the shore of my ignorance. So जितना सीखते हैं उतना पता लगता जाता है कि कितना कुछ अभी नहीं पता है. बट जब तक आप उस चीज में घुसे ही नहीं हो, आपने पढ़ा ही नहीं है, तो आपको नहीं पता कि कितना आपको नहीं पता है. बट एज यू लर्न, you also realize how much there is that you do not know, and you feel like an imposter no matter how much you.
You said it.
Yeah.
So I was about to say that yes, when I started out as a nutritionist and a fitness coach, I used to think I know a lot. And it was like, okay, whatever there was in the world to learn, I had it all in me. So as I kept, getting more certifications and life coaching certification, usse pehle health coaching certification from the US, the more I learned, the more I went into the depth of things. I realized there is so much to learn, and I always, but that has given me a perspective, a mindset shift. So I know that nobody can ever know everything. And it's made me very humble to know that I will never be perfect. So I am known to be an expert in wellness and a lot of say different aspects of wellness. But I also know that every single day there'll be new discoveries and a lot of information. I will never know everything. And that has made me uh, very happy with my imperfection. That means I will never know everything. And I will always be happy to say to even a client that I accept in front of the client that if they have some certain questions that I cannot answer for them, I'm happy to say I will revert, I will check and come back because I will never be perfect. And that also, then, this is what I've learned that perfection is something that doesn't exist. So, since I won't know anything, and nobody would ever be perfect,
Yeah.
it's an illusion. Perfection is an illusion.
Yeah.
And through that, I learned that there are small wins, and whatever I know through my experiences is going to be enough. I'm a complete person in myself, and whatever I know is unique. So I don't need to know it all. So
Yeah.
that makes me feel very fulfilled.
Let's get to Navy. How did Navy happen?
Okay.
Among the first batch of Indian women, please tell us
Yeah.
precisely what it was.
I'll say that whenever life throws challenges at you, uh, there's always a door hidden, there's a concealed door where on the other side lies freedom. So, whenever there are adversities, there will be some kind of an opening, but you have to be very vigilant. If you're desperate to change your destiny, you have to be very vigilant as to where that opportunity lies. You have to be just there, sharp. So, what happened in my case is that suddenly in 1992, Indian Navy decided to open the doors for women. And out of the three services, Air Force, Indian Navy, and Army, Indian Navy was the first to open the doors. So I think that I applied, of course, but I think that desperation, that desire to get away from this soul sucking life must have been so strong subconsciously that when I got a call from the service selection board, I gave it my best shot because, as you know, that I wasn't an athlete, I wasn't into fitness, and that service selection board, at least one component is about your physical fitness, and you have those say challenges, obstacles laid out for you. But I remember that I went all out, and there was as if there's some superpower inside, and I performed. For example, there was this, I think, Tiger's Leap or something within that service selection board. So the person will come and give you the rope. You're on a high table or something, and then you have to swing.
Mm.
I remember I was so desperate to just get through that I didn't wait for the person, or I didn't know he's going to give that rope which was hanging there, and I was here. I just leapt at it. I mean, I jumped at it and held it in the air and then swung. I remember my hands were bleeding and whatever it was, but the whole experience, I mean, I gave it my best shot. And then I was selected. And then I think it was the biggest turning point of my life. And I think the powers above also wanted to give me this opportunity. And I'm glad that I took it. Having said that, life in the Navy was initially very grueling. It wasn't again a bed of roses,
Mm.
as if, it wasn't like my childhood was a bed of roses. So was not Navy initially. So, as we know, Defense Forces, it's a grueling, especially a physically grueling routine. So, whereas I hadn't even walked the 100 meter without sulking, it was like I had to say march in the sharp Goa sun for hours together with a heavy rifle slung on my shoulder. Then I had to run cross countries where I had never run in my life. Walking was so tough. I had to row hose that felt like heavy electricity poles as part of the boat pulling exercise and so many other things. So it was like, I didn't know what hit me initially, but I think I was more than willing to take this kind of a, say, these kind of challenges than the soul sucking ordeals of my childhood. So I was willing to trade this kind of a life for that.
Mm.
And initially, it took me a while, but eventually, my body and mind fell into place and adapted to the rigors. And I realized then that there's a big takeaway, because I think back, I realized that we all think small. We all, get, say, very perturbed with small and big challenges. But our body and mind are capable of so much more. I realized that each one of us has huge reserves, huge reservoirs of inner strength within us.
Mm.
And if we are willing to tap on it, because they are lying dormant. In my case, they were lying totally dormant. I was like, I'm frail, I'm fragile. How will I do that? Kind of a thing. And when I had no choice and moved with the flow, all the reserves came to the fore, and I was able to manage, and I was able to do pretty well. I mean, I was able to float.
Yeah.
So, what happened was that all the inner reserves came, and I, for the first time in my life, tasted my inner strength and realized that I have a lot of resilience and fortitude which I can fall back upon in future. So that was very emancipating and very empowering for me, and that's why it was the first stage of my transformation from being a fragile girl mentally, emotionally, physically, to someone who was willing to taste this resilience, go inwards to say awaken her dormant inner strength. So I would say this was the first stage of my transformation.
Super inspiring. Yeah. So when you subject yourself to really tough challenges, uh, I think running and ultra running, you've done ultras as well. I've also realized this, when you're taking on a tough challenge, it doesn't even have to be an ultra. It can be a marathon, even a shorter distance. When there comes a stage where you feel that this is all you had and you're totally done, but if you don't give up there and you carry on and you feel like you have to hit the finish line at all costs, when you keep going that way, after a while you realize that this was your mental chatter that was holding you back, and new reserves of energy come to the surface, and you realize that, like this has happened in ultras with me. Like in my first 100K, I was completely gone, and I think 15 odd kilometers had left, and I was like, this is it, I can't even walk, I'm so fatigued. And then, because I was determined to do it and not give up, I carried on, and suddenly a phase comes, right, where it becomes smooth, and you're like gliding, and you're like, dude, ye kahan se aaya? It's not like I've had some tonic or something. Nothing. It's just, and so something surfaced from within, and
Totally.
that takes you to the finish line.
Yeah.
So incredible. That's what you're happened with you
Yes.
in Navy as well. Looking at you, nobody would have bet on you saying that ये लड़की बहुत अच्छा करेगी Navy में, or she'll be able to get through all these challenges. But even in fact, you wouldn't have bet on yourself.
So on the contrary,
Mm,
it's like everybody would say,
mm,
my relatives, my friends, तुम नेवी में, how did you manage there? Oh my God, तुम तो बहुत quiet थी. You were so withdrawn.
mm,
And तुम तो, I was like mediocre.
mm,
At one stage, I didn't want to be seen actually. So I felt ashamed of myself. So I believe. So it was like they were surprised, the Navy, and then running, and then triathlons and all. And how did you surface?
yeah.
So yes, I myself was surprised initially. But looking back, I think I realized that I had some hidden wings. I had to open up, and they would open up. They will help me fly. So I built that self trust over a period of time, and it came from that self love, self compassion, which I could go on and on and on talking
Yeah.
about that. So I think I wasn't aware of this earlier, but looking back, I know it must have been a journey, slow journey
Mm,
to realizing that it's all within us. Physical strength, mental strength, everything comes from within you
mm.
if you're willing to step out of your comfort zone.
Okay. So first stage of transformation began with Navy.
Yes.
Where did that take you? How long were you in the Navy? What was it like?
Yeah.
And when did you quit Navy?
So I initially it was only short service commission for us. So it was 7 years for the Navy.
Mhm.
So from 1992 to 1999. So I was in the Navy. So when I quit, before that, I finished my MBA, but I thought I would get into the corporate world. But my son was a baby then, and it was a very conscious decision for us, me and my husband, that I would take a back seat and do my bit, whatever I can. And I would look after him in the sense, be there, present, totally be there for him. So I took up like, you can call it a career or whatever. So I was a fitness coach for many years. I had my own studio in Gurgaon and took group fitness classes after getting certified by Reebok. And then I enhanced this with, say, a fellowship in nutrition and so on. But this was manageable because I was always there when my son was there. So whenever, like after leaving him to the bus, at the school bus, I would then start my classes. And when he was back, I would be there to pick him up from like the point where he would alight. So I was always there for him.
And then you say you're not a perfect mother. This is
Nobody can be a perfect parent.
Hmm.
I know for that for sure, because we are not perfect beings.
Yeah.
And
And we
that's
don't even know
beautiful.
what perfection looks like as far as parenting
Absolutely.
is concerned in
So
any way.
whoever says they are perfect, I think they need to have a
Yeah.
relook inside.
Right.
So having said that, this was the interim phase. Well, at the same time, I discovered running. It somehow happened that I discovered running. And what running did for me was amazing if I look back. That I was, it gave me the realization that my body is capable of much more than I gave it that credit. I mean, it also helped me release my trauma bit by bit. Even if I didn't, even if it was lying deep inside, in the subconscious mind. But I realized that before that I had everything in my life: a good husband, a really supportive husband, and a wonderful son, everything, and all the comforts that one would need that were missing from my childhood. But there was something inside me which was not feeling fulfilled. I never felt fulfilled. And that was, I think, that led me to a lot of people pleasing and external validation, because I think I needed so much of attention in my life that which was missing, that I looked at everybody to I wanted to please everybody. But then running, running did to me was, I it gave me confidence for the first time in myself. That self-worth that was missing, I realized that I am someone. I am an entity. I can run. And I was also people pleasing at that time. So I said, look, people think I am somebody wonderful. I can do things. I can run so well. So podiums kept happening one after the other, while they gave me a lot of happiness, guess, but also that people's expectations, I was working on their expectations. So I kept running for myself, but also for the others, to keep that image that I'm an amazing runner. At that point, also, I was actually living for external validation. But having said that, running has given me a lot of release from it all started from there. And I realized, because of that movement, the running movement that I added, that actually it started giving me some peace, which was missing internally, which I couldn't put a finger on. So this was how running went. And
So this then led to triathlons. Or no, but
okay,
before triathlon, because triathlon is fairly recent, like 5 years ago, I think 5 years ago, 2018,
2017
17.
or maybe 16.
When did your first book come out?
I'm bad with years, so it definitely was before that. I think it
Yeah.
must have been 16 or 15.
15, 16.
Yeah.
And the first book was called Parenting in the Age of McDonald's.
McDonald's,
Title hi
yes.
itna zabardast hai. So, please, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, a little.
Yeah.
So while all this was going on, I was also, say, blogging as a fitness and nutrition expert for a parenting website. I was writing blogs there. So I got noticed by Rupa Publications. And I would say I am damn lucky, because writing books is not easy.
Yeah.
So it just fell into my lap. They reached out to me that I should write a book on parenting. So as I said, I'm not a perfect parent. I'm not the first parent who came to know that how to parent in the best way. All those things are not new. It is all there. But my own experiences of falling down and getting up, learning from other parents, and also my own personal experience led to that book. So it's like that was the first book. It is about mostly about child nutrition, because that's what the publishers wanted me to write about.
So while I don't want you to give everything away about the book, please tell us like bits of what's in the book. Why should people go check it out?
So that is like a new parent who is becoming a parent for the first time, and who doesn't have a lot of support from, say, their own parents around, having them around and all, would, like, I was confused for the first time, because I only have one child, and I didn't know how to raise him initially. Instinct is one thing, but then at that time there was not too much information. It was also very conflicting. So it is like, with so much information outside which is conflicting, and so many ways of thinking. So it is like, ye karu ya wo karu. This is what my grandmother told me. This is what the others are saying. This is what the media is talking about. Ke ye khilao ya wo khilao. So it can be very confusing. At one point, it was very confusing.
It still is, actually, because
I'm sure.
with information overload, it's
Oh.
still not easy. And I'm a first time parent also, so I've experienced that firsthand. Yeah.
So I know you would know it
Yeah.
firsthand. So I actually collated a lot of information, mostly from my own personal experiences of trial and error. So I have put some, like, there are sections in that book where when your child is studying, what foods are good for your child, what would the fussy eater do, how can you manage a fussy eater, which is a big thing for a parent, a big
Oh yeah,
big
massive,
challenge. So
massive.
things like that I've put in the
Okay,
book. And also say, I think that is in the next book.
let's leave this one right here.
Right.
We'll urge people to go check it out. It's available on Amazon.
Yes, it is.
Okay,
All
great.
three books are.
Yeah, we have two more books to talk about as well. Then, so after this, the major event in your life was a triathlon or something else?
Yes.
Are we missing something in between?
So, no. So, it's, while I was running, I was also addicted to, hooked on to, say, strength training. So, I also joined a gym and I was lifting heavy, quite heavy. So, that happened side by side. And that actually aided my running prowess.
Mhm.
So, it helped me run better and better. But then I was not satisfied. I think there was a lot of hunger, because once you taste blood, you don't stop at one. So it was like, oh my God, I can run, I can strength train. What next? What next? What next? So it was always that hunger in this field of fitness or exercise or whatever you want to call it, sports. So I had a lot of friends, and I found some people around me, because I was moving a lot within this fitness, Gurgaon ka fitness circle.
Yeah.
There were people who were attempting triathlons.
Mm.
So I was, since I wanted to do everything, it at that stage it was like, all I want is everything. So
Mm.
I thought, why not triathlons? But then, talking about triathlons, as you know, and as most people would know now, it is a multi-sport consisting of three individual sports: running, cycling, and swimming. So my challenge, while my running was sorted,
Mm.
my swimming was sorted while in the pool. I had never tasted swimming in the open sea
Mm.
or open waters. And cycling was my Achilles foot. I mean, I never owned a cycle in my life. And at the ripe age of 47, 47, I picked up my first cycle. And that was a mountain bike.
Hmm.
And when I picked that up, I bought that cycle. I first time learned how to mount it.
Yeah.
And just it was like I learned to mount and was in just in time for attempting two shorter triathlons. And of course, one half Ironman level triathlon, not exactly that first. So I just somehow managed, but my skills were very basic in cycling. So, as you would know, that you need to ride in aerodynamic position. So I didn't know how to do that. I have so many pictures where I'm like riding straight like this, and then you need to be able to balance your bike on one hand, so that you can take nutrition and
Nutrition.
hydration from the other one on the go.
Yeah.
So I had this huge hydration bag plonked on my back, and I would keep sipping only after stopping. I never learned how to balance my bike on one hand. I remember when I had attempted Ironman 70.3,
Sri
I
Lanka.
had the courage to just sign up for that for 2018 February. So this was my skill set at that time, that I had to stop and take my nutrition. I still don't know how to wear cleated shoes, which is
Yeah.
important. So my cycling skills remain there. And the third thing, while my swimming was sorted in the pool, decent, it was when I went and for the first time joined a group, local swimmers group in Khardanda, and went for my first swimming sortie in the sea. The moment I jumped from the boat into the sea, I started feeling disoriented.
Mm.
It was a feeling akin to being put in a washing machine, where you're being tossed and moved around and somersaulting. It was very, very uncomfortable. And soon I started throwing up. So I thought it's because it's the first attempt in the sea, and sea was kind of turbulent, or maybe it wasn't for others, it was for me.
Mhm.
So I said, never mind, I have to do it. So I attempted it on different days again, for I think 3 or 4 attempts. Story continued. So I felt very messed up and went to a doctor. He pronounced me with a very, say, fancy issue, a fancy problem, which is BPPV. It's a kind of, never mind, I don't remember the entire,
Mm.
what it means, but I know what it means, but I can't tell you the exact BPV, what it stands for. So it is basically a kind of a vertigo. In simple words, it's called seasickness.
Mm.
So
Okay.
I was suffering from seasickness. It's not debilitating. I mean, it's not life threatening, but there was no medical intervention for it. I don't know if it is there now. So I had to live with that.
Mm.
So initially, I was already signed up for February 2018 Ironman 70.3,
Sri
but
Lanka, right?
Sri Lanka, Colombo. So now I was like, say, my biggest strength were running. So I have to give you an insight on that. There were 3 weeks remaining for my big event,
Mhm.
maybe 2 months, and I fractured my foot.
Wow.
So I fractured my 2 small digits of my left foot. So my biggest strength, that was running,
Hmm.
came to an abrupt halt, even if temporarily. So then, because I was desperate, I tied a tape around 3 digits so to stabilize it and started running.
Mm.
So that caused me another injury, which is called tendinitis of the left foot. So with 3 weeks remaining, my biggest strength had come down running. I had a fracture. I was limping, and but somehow managing to run with that. I scooped big holes into my shoes so that there was less of friction,
Hmm.
and I have those pictures with me. So and I started running with the best of my ability. Swimming, I had to make do with swimming in the pool, and cycling, as you know, wasn't my biggest
Yeah.
strength ever. So at that point I had this dilemma to not go ahead or to go anyways and give it a shot.
I was
So
going to say, when you were diagnosed with seasickness as well,
yeah.
did you not like consider giving up completely there?
Y- Yes, there were days. I mean, a couple of days I got into that victim mentality. Totally, why me? Why now? And why is it happening when it's going to be my big day within say 3 weeks time? And what do I do now? Do I give up? I'm not good enough. And sulking, whining, whimpering. That went on for a couple of days. But thankfully for me, after 2 days, I decided to do something about it and took a decision to go anyways and attempt it. The moment I decided that I'm going ahead anyways, it actually changed things for me. So I started uh, practicing to the best of I started training to the best of my ability. As I said, swimming in the pool and running, limping, and slowing down, whatever worked for me at that time. And cycling, whatever, like slow, fast, whatever. I joined a cycling group and managed somehow. But how I managed was, there was another intervention which is very important to mention. I had read a lot in those days and come across books um, about the power of visualization and affirmations. So
Mhm.
at that time, what gave me strength to go on and to decide that I can go ahead was that I want to test this out, visualization and affirmation. So I made a ritual out of this. Every single day till the race day, I would write a journal. Either I would visualize the entire race in my mind's eye from the time I jumped into the sea all the way up to the finish line,
Mm.
imagining that I am successfully, I finished that, And or else I would write it down very clearly, step by step, into my journal. So every day I started believing that I have finished my race, and I started having this gratitude. Thank you, God, that I finished this race so beautifully. And I would add, obviously, with visualization goes affirmations hand in hand. So I would affirm all the time the thank you that I finished this race with some time to spare and all those things. I It gives me goosebumps because just a few days back I went back to the journal of 2018 and 17, and I've seen that how I've written all that, and it is amazing that it is just surreal. So with that, I left for Sri Lanka, and on the race day, you won't believe it, I felt like a pro triathlete. While others were like, how will it go? They were well prepared, but they still didn't feel so confident. My friends, it was like, I don't know how it'll go. I just felt a surreal calm and peace, as if I was very well prepared. And with a leap of faith and self trust and trust in those modalities of visualization and affirmations, I just jumped into the sea. And when jumped into the sea, it wasn't like everything was going fine. But there were mental gremlins which were telling me, come on, Tanuja, you're seasick. You haven't swum in so many weeks. You're supposed to start throwing up. But I decided to ignore them have faith in the powers above, and in the fact that I have already finished this race so many times, so I will finish. With that, I went one stroke at a time, which is important. One stroke. I did not think of the entire race in one go. I thought about the swimming part, and I said, I'm going to finish swimming. And right now, I'm going to just put one arm in front of the other, and I'll keep going. And I finished the swimming leg with probably 11 minutes to spare, even after drifting a lot. And that gave me amazing amount of confidence that this part was very tough and I managed. So I went on to the second one, the cycling part. So I kept affirming and visualizing and everything. My friends who were watching this and actually from India, they were actually following this race, were very scared. They thought she's going to just be disqualified because there were cutoffs, as everybody
Yeah.
knows, cutoffs within for each of these three
Like,
segments.
yes.
And then the overall cutoff of 8.5 hours. So somehow, with all these affirmations and the fact that I'm going to do it, and I kept going, and I finished the cycling leg just in time. So I'm not a great triathlete. I just managed to finish that with just a self faith within for the powers above and in my own capability. Then I knew that running has always been my forte,
Yeah.
and I'm meant to finish because 2/3 of the race is over. So I just kept those affirmations. I kept looking at the finish line in my mind and affirming. And through the pain, because I still had tendonitis, I just kept going, and I did finish the line. I did cross the finish line and finish the race with 11 minutes to spare. And it was surreal when the organizers announced, Tanuja Sodi, you are an Iron Man. That was surreal. It gives me goosebumps because this is how I had written in my journal all the while that this is how my race would get over. So this was an amazing journey for me. And having said that, I want to say I'm not a triathlete.
Yeah.
But what this taught me was that if you willingly step out of your comfort zone from time to time, if you have a dream, and if you're willing to step out of your comfort zone, hold the fear doors, knock on your fear doors, then there is light on the other side. There are amazing opportunities and possibilities waiting on the other side. But sometimes we stay cozy in our cocoons, in our comfort zones, and don't realize that we're missing out on so much of life. And if you have such huge dreams, it is not impossible. If you decide that you can do it, you just have to. It is uncomfortable because a change or say uncertainty is uncomfortable. But if you make up your mind and take small action steps in that direction, there are possibilities and you can do anything as that you want.
Why did you want to do an Ironman?
I think it was more to prove to myself that let's test it out. I want to do it and I'm capable of it. And it was partially to test out how far can I go, because I was on the roll at that time, running, winning, running, winning. Then I had done an Ultra Bhatti one, which gave me a lot of confidence. I realized I can do a lot. So I said, why not try this? I was really fascinated looking at this. It really fascinated me, that triathlon thing. Only I thought was the cycling bit. I thought I can learn it. And I did. But then I think one part was that, and one part must have been to prove to the world that I have arrived,
Sure.
that I am a triathlete and I am this and I am that. Maybe I loved those tags at that time because I wanted to probably also please the people around me, because internally I think I was craving for all the attention in my life. And now I realize at this point today in my life that I wanted that. I wanted like
Validation.
attention, a lot of attention, fame. I wanted to be loved. I wanted to be said that, yes, Tanuja, you have some worth, you are worthy. And I'm sure that also was a reason that I wanted to prove to the world that I'm great.
How's that craving now?
So that craving of wanting that, say, a voracious appetite for doing this and doing that to prove to the others has gone down a lot. I think my appetite is much lower. Having said, a lot went in between, which that there's been a journey,
Yeah.
spiritual journey. So today, if you just ask me, I want to talk about that journey,
Sure.
but I want to tell you that that appetite has, I have surrendered in the sense that those tags don't matter to me as much, because at that point, I didn't have any relationship with myself. I didn't even know who Tanuja Sodhi actually was. At that time, whatever the world told me, I felt I was that. I was this amazing runner. I was this triathlete. And I was this. I was this
Author.
author and all. And I was like basking in that glory. And I felt good. But today I realize that I have a relationship with myself, much deeper one. I have started loving myself. So the love that I was looking from outside world is right there inside me for myself. So when I started owning myself, owning who I am, and having compassion for myself and having that love for myself, yes, I'm imperfect, but I am fine the way I am. So that craving subsided. And so it's not like I need to do something so that people remember me. I have had low phases, and it doesn't bother me because I have a beautiful relationship with myself, and I'm still working on it.
Yeah.
It's always work in progress here.
Sure. Yeah. So I think this could be a good segue into that second part of the transformation. But before we do that, I just wanted to ask you a little bit more about the visualization bit that you mentioned. I hear I mean, people also make fun of affirmations and everything. Like, you stand in front of the mirror and say, I am rich, I am rich, I'm rich, and you're not going to become rich. And you say, I am fit or whatever. You keep repeating that to yourself in front of the mirror. That's really not going to cut it. But when you do this with some action and some plan, when you combine the two, that's when the magic really seems to work. Because even the top athletes, a lot of the top athletes, they
Yes.
say they practice this. They see themselves crossing the finish line, and I think science also backs this up. You form new neural patterns, and they help you get through to the finish line.
Absolutely.
So you'd say that affirmations would work if you have a plan.
So I would say that is just affirmations wouldn't work the way you said.
Yeah.
Of course, you stand in front of a mirror, you feel phony.
Yeah, exactly.
So affirmations have to be with a faith from within. You have to surrender. You cannot have a logical mind telling you that this is all bullshit, and at the same time just rattle off verbally
Yeah.
that I am thin, I am successful, I am this and I am that. So, how I learned affirmations plus visualization, they are extension of each other. How they work really well is when you play, you surrender. Okay, let me see how this works. I have to have faith in this modality and I have to have faith. I have to give it a chance to work. At the same time, when you say that, you have to believe that it has already happened. You have to put in that emotion of gratitude. So unless you have that gratitude, that means you, if you say that Iron Man karna hai, and you say, oh my God, you have to put that gratitude feeling ke, oh my God, thank you so much, God, for I am an Iron Man already. So that science says that neural pathways will be formed, that every time you keep repeating that thing, your brain doesn't know what is the reality between actually something happening or your thought process. So when you keep saying that, the new neural pathways will be there, which will show that it has already happened. So they will make you, they will show up like opportunities will show up, and you will actually notice those
You're more
things,
likely to
and
pick
you
up
will
on them.
start taking actions.
Yeah.
So this is one. And when you put in gratitude, you're already telling yourself it has happened. And looking
Mm.
at it from that, that you're sending your thoughts, the way you, whatever thoughts, frequencies you send to the universe, it all comes back. So if you are saying all the time that I life sucks, I am useless, but affirm that, oh, life is beautiful. So there is a
disconnect.
contradiction.
Yeah.
So if you surrender and say everything is good, thank you, God, it has happened. And if your emotions are positive
Yeah.
and there's gratitude, I can tell you that it has to happen. There is somebody I follow, an expert in this called Dr. Joe Dispenza. I've
I
read a
know.
lot of his books.
Yeah.
And they tell you, actually, I can't explain the way he does of how it works scientifically.
Oh yeah, Joe Dispenza is crazy. Like I mean, I don't believe in a lot in
You have to
what
read
he
that
says,
book.
but you know the way he says it, like you can't question it. It's
So you have to
crazy.
read it. So even if you have this logical mind, which is not wrong, you have to, if you have to live in this world, you have to have a part of that left side of the brain working well. But if you read it, you understand how this works at that scientific level, because those are the neural pathways
Yeah.
that you have to work upon.
Yeah.
So yes.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think I remember quite a few. I mean, I've consumed a lot of his content, and he talks about like when you wake up in the morning, a lot of our life, like 95% of our lives, is actually the thoughts from the previous day. It's just repetitive.
Yes.
Like they're constant repetitive thoughts that we have. So when we have the same thoughts lead to actions, right? So we have the same actions, and then we are surprised that no change comes about, right? So then he says the first intervention then has to be to break those patterns, right?
Yes.
And I believe, so how does one break that pattern? Because so that's where I guess meditation will be discussed.
Yes.
But before that, just on the affirmation bit, you said, so I can understand gratitude in itself. It changes your physiology. Having gratitude for what you have is immensely valuable. It changes in an instant. It changes the way you feel about yourself and your life. Like in an instant, you're feeling shitty about everything, and you suddenly feel sab acha hai, right?
It's a mindset shift.
Absolutely. Like,
Suddenly.
and it could be the smallest of things, right?
Absolutely.
So and I've been a big believer in journaling as well as gratitude journaling. So a lot of that is a lot of my journaling is gratitude journaling as well. Not all the time though, but I started this small practice of, when I wake up, first thing I do is I look at my wife and my daughter. I just look at them and I feel immense gratitude for the fact that these guys are here. They're in good health today,
Yes.
and they're next to me. And I have this instant realization that that will not be the case forever.
Yeah.
She will grow up, she will go somewhere
Yes.
else. Something will happen to us one day or the other. It will happen. So it's bound to come. For this moment, it's just so special, right? So that changes my physiology, and it's a good start to the day. So I understand that bit of gratitude. But when you say imagining something and thanking God in advance. Let's say somebody does not believe in God, so I don't believe in God. Who do I thank then? And how does one like?
So that is a feeling that is a practice of surrender to higher forces. You may call it God, you may call it universe, you may call it some spiritual force. You don't have to be religious to be spiritual as well. So if that'll even make you say more in the sense that you have to believe in there is something that is looking, has your back, is looking after you. So
So there's, I mean, it's easy to believe that there's something higher than me because there's nature, right?
yes,
उससे बड़ा क्या देखोगे आप, right?
you call it nature.
और उसमें like it's visible and it's apparent, it's scientific and
Right,
everything.
right.
But to believe somebody has my back, that requires a leap of faith.
Yes, so that is a leap of faith till you taste it.
Yeah.
If you taste it with this, let me test out if there is a God, let me test out if there are higher powers, you may fall back because that's your ego telling you that. But if you, in one point of time, if you humbly just surrender and say, there may be a force bigger than me, more magnificent, and let me just surrender and let life flow and try to put in faith to see, not to test out, but just go with the flow of life and know that there's someone looking after me. It is going to be amazing.
I mean, I can see how how believing that will actually make me feel better and more at ease. That jo bhi hoga, you'll see there's a greater plan, in the bigger scheme of things. This is probably better for me, even though I didn't get what I wanted. But maybe there's something because somebody has my back. It's reassuring to feel that way. But it's just that some people find it very hard to believe that way. It's is there a way to in like get around to believing that? Is there a
So I would say it's the left brain working or the right
yeah?
brain. So in my case, it's like I think I'm a right brain person. So I don't go by everything in my life isn't about logic. Okay, how is that possible? Because this is a physical world and logic is part of that physical world. So that spiritual world, if you have a very strong logic, please prove how there is a God, then the bigger plan you don't even know because you are thinking from this physical world perspective. So bigger plan, I don't know how that would work for you initially. Sometimes what happens is you fall down, and sometimes there's a loss, sometimes there's grief. In those moments when you surrender, then sometimes that is when that change comes over. Sometimes people have very huge challenges and they see at that times they see why that happened to you. It just comes to you. You're open to something else from within rather than some information coming from the external world that you need to question everything. Sometimes you need to listen to your intuition, that inner voice can tell you this is right or wrong, and it can lead you to that shift in your perspective. So I'm really not sure how, if I have to change somebody, I can change somebody's way of thinking. No, it has to be, each one has their own journey.
Yeah.
Even those who are atheists, they have their own journey. So I am not somebody who knows how to change the way somebody thinks. But I can tell you personally, my own experiences that this has changed my whole life when I surrendered, when I thought there is so much more than just fame and being a runner or having different tags that I'm very strong, I'm beautiful. I have had all the tags and I have no shame in sharing with you. But when those tags are breaking, even to this point, one by one, every single day, and by being a nobody outside, I'm being a somebody inside. I have seen things that are changing around me magically, mystically. Every single day, there are synchronicities. When I think of something, there are opportunities showing up in my email. I meet people related to that. I can't explain to you.
Yeah.
If you are a logical person, I can't explain how they're happening. Everything in my life can't be a coincidence that I'm thinking about something and that is happening. And it is not about these things, running or other, because I've learned how to balance my life. And I know there is a need for other things which can make me more fulfilled than just running, just say triathlons, just being this, or just partying, or just being life of the party or whatever.
Yeah.
So you get my
No,
point.
I do certainly. No, it's yeah, it's and the way you said it, if you're in this like if you're questioning a higher world, being in this physical world, it may be not possible. Also, because so I recently did an episode with Guruji, Prabhuji,
Okay.
uh, Vrindavan Chandradas in
Right.
Vrindavan. So
Okay.
he in that also mentions that he said spiritual science is a science, and you can't study biology and then hope to know physics, right? Or a doctor can't tell you about the stars, right? It's an
Right.
astrophysicist,
Yes.
right? So it's a different science that you have to study. वो आपने जब तक नहीं पढ़ा तब तक आप question करके यही बोलते
Quantum
रहो.
physics and all. I haven't studied everything, but it's like from within.
Yeah, quantum physics is a rabbit hole. तो मतलब अलग, it's mind boggling,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So your journey to spirituality, you were a meditator earlier as well. No, you weren't. Okay. So please tell us what happened. What happened in COVID?
So with 2020 and COVID in its wake, a lot of things changed. So I was like very proud of myself that I'm eating clean. I'm into so much of fitness, and all these things are sorted. So I think two aspects of my life, which are the biggest, I thought are so I should be totally fit physically and mentally, and I was very proud of that. And even if I had a small problem, I wouldn't share with the world because I thought I'm being vulnerable. And I'm supposed to be somebody who's supposed to be absolutely fit and fine in mind, body, and spirit,
Yeah.
and especially physically. So how can I have a problem? So it was then that my body totally broke down. In fact, I used to surreptitiously run even during COVID time initially, and there was one fine day that I would want to run. All my joints had clamped up. At one point, there was so much pain. It was like a symphony of different joints, aching and paining. So if I wanted to run, even in 50 meters, my lower back, my knees would buckle. They would scream in pain. And talking about lifting weights, and of course, my heart rate would jump in that red zone immediately. If I attempted within 3-4 minutes, I would feel, my heart rate is very high, and it would be. And then talking about lifting weights, I couldn't even actually grip a pen properly. All my joints, whether it was like my finger joints hurt, wrists, elbows were sore, my toes were like red, my back, my neck. In fact, there was a point in my in that year, a few days, I could not move my neck. It was like cervical spondylitis type symptoms, everything, and I had severe headaches and everything together. So I just thought my body was going through a very tough time, but I
What
could
were
not
you
understand.
diagnosed with? What?
So, when I didn't have fever, I didn't have those typical COVID symptoms. But later on, what doctors didn't let me come. They said you don't have a problem. At that time, they didn't know COVID could manifest in other ways. So later on, they said probably it's believed to be fibromyalgia. They were symptoms like typically from fibromyalgia. And now that it was not just this, my sleep totally disappeared. I became an insomniac with 1 or 2 hours in the day of sleeping. So it was like chronic fatigue, pain. I couldn't walk. It was like I have tasted depression firsthand during those times. And it was the lowest state of my physical fitness and my mental emotional state at that time. I think so what was happening was I was breaking down bit by bit, and whatever strength I had here was also depleting because I felt fear firsthand. There was a point in 2020 that I felt I'm dying, perhaps dying because I couldn't move, and I started looking at the world with black and gray lens somehow. I felt kya fayda. I'd come to that state. And it might sound weird at this point, but I started preparing my family, my husband and son, for the eventuality. And it's not surprising at that time because those were sad times that people were dying. So I thought I would die as well, and I'm having something more severe. But there was an inflection, moment of inflection, in one moment of clarity one day. And my son and my husband's support, like undying support, because they would keep saying, "You're just imagining, you're going to be fine, you're going to be fine." My son introduced me to gratitude journaling at that time. And my son also introduced me to meditation. I could not, but I was consistently showing up and doing it 5 minutes, 2 minutes, sitting every single day. One day I decided that I have to do something about my deplorable state, because I was going down the rabbit hole, going down that spiral very quickly.
Yeah.
And if not otherwise, I would have died had I not stopped myself. In that one moment of unbelievable strength, mental strength, I picked myself up and decided to do something about it. So I I built a say ritual of winning habits around it. So I decided I'm going to meditate in the morning. It was a full ritual. I'm going to have gratitude journaling.
So before we get to the ritual, would you not, since you're a coach yourself and you know how much expert intervention can help, did you not consider taking help at the time?
Did, but I went to a doctor. I thought I'm having rheumatoid arthritis. I got all the tests done because I didn't know. Nobody wanted to touch you at that time. They didn't want to see you in the hospital. So it was a bad time. It was like you were taking those consultations over visual consultations,
Yeah,
and not
yeah, yeah.
meeting in person. So I went to this doctor that I have arthritis or what's happening. He said, "You don't have anything." So he said, "Yeah, it may be your sleep, it may be whatever, I can't know, but you don't have arthritis." So I was totally confused. And it was in such a time, I didn't know how to seek help from whom. Doctors were not
Yeah.
available. I didn't know
Sure.
which doctor to see.
Yeah.
So it was like either I could just feel confused and depressed and let life take me the way it is, just be, or I should do something about it.
Yeah.
In that moment of clarity, one moment of clarity, I decided that I'm going to be my best coach. I'm not going to, and I was given very heavy doses of sleeping tablets and other things. I decided in one moment that I'm not going to take any of the medication because I don't even know what's happening to me. So I decided I am going to test out these rituals, these interventions, which are so well hyped. So meditation, breath work, that is pranayam, plus I follow Wim Hof. So Wim
Yeah.
Hof breathing, I put in everything that I thought I could. 1 hour ritual, visualization of my condition, going inwards and telling my cells, affirming that you're well, you're telling your body that you're perfectly fine, visualizing every part of my body, organ by organ, that you are well, you are healthy every single day, doing this, getting them, plus a positive self talk. That means ke kuch nahi ho raha hai, life sucks and all, kuch nahi. Positive self talk, affirmations, plus, being more positive generally, and looking at because that's also gratitude, looking at what is going well in my life.
Yeah.
So that shifts your perspective, your mindset from being a victim to being more empowered. So I built these, and at the night, gratitude prayers would be there for I'm alive every morning, I'm breathing, my family is absolutely healthy, and all those things. At night, I would journal, gratitude journaling of starting with minimum 5 things: that there was breeze today, cool breeze. I ate something healthy today. My family is by my side. I am cooking for my family with love. I am cleaning my house. Today, somebody smiled at me. Today, I was able to sneak out and run for a bit, or maybe walk for a bit. Even if my family not run, was holding me together, I was able to see this, made jokes at me, all those.
Yeah.
Even when I started with 5 things, I realized I have 20, 30 things to write in my journal. Today, I minimum have 20 things to write in my journal that went off well. So that shifted my outlook from what I don't have to what I have. And that is a huge blessing always. I always know there's so much happening. So I became a more positive person. And these modality of meditation, visualizing, breath work over a period of time, they changed everything. And going inwards, I sharpened my inner voice, intuition, started listening to that more than listening to the external world.
Yeah.
And I also started feeling that I am healing. And whether you believe it or not, I took no medication. And in August 2022, there was something amazing that happened to like I suddenly realized that I have that strength. I bit by bit started working out again and everything. 2022 there was a say a fitness challenge in my gym in Mumbai, that is DNA 360. And there were 9 or 10 say challenges. That means bench press, weighted squats, deadlift, and things like that. All of them, whatever, a lot of them. I won all of them in my age category. Not only that, but also for the deadlift, I think I lifted 251 or 41, I don't know, reps
Wow.
of half body weight
Hmm.
to be adjudged second amongst all category, male, female, and all age categories. So this is not to blow my own trumpet that I'm
Insane.
telling you.
Hmm.
This I'm telling you that this is the faith I had in my own healing. I participated in my own healing rather than just expecting doctors to do that bit for me, because nobody knew. I didn't know what was happening. And bit by bit, I built back my physical strength, emotional strength, and I came back stronger than ever before. And that put a lot of confidence back into me, that anytime I break down in any sphere of my life, I have the tools that are needed to heal myself.
Amazing. What a transformation. Thank you for sharing that. Just to underline what you just said about the gratitude bit, it does feel a little woo-woo to people sometimes. And even if they don't believe in it, I will. So I follow some people on who are from advertising, and
Uh-huh.
advertising people
Yeah.
write some great content. So
Yeah.
one of them actually had written on one of the stories sometime. There's in life, perhaps there's no happily ever after. Like bits of goodness that come your way, and if you are present to like savor them, uh that's it. Like this is it. There's not yahi hai jo hai this little nice cup of coffee. You had water and you felt good, and this conversation, and whatever you can be thankful for, jo mil raha hai acha, this is it. Kabhi wo time aayega hi nahi. There's, oh my god, the life is so amazing and everything is so perfect. You may be waiting forever for that moment,
Yeah,
right? So
absolutely.
it's so important to realize that this is it, and it's so important to be present and like savor whatever comes your way. um Great. And that can lead to transformations like this,
I do believe
from
that.
from
Yes.
being completely broken to
Yeah.
winning competitions again. Yeah, and winning bigger competitions inside. So you talked about tools. Tell us some of the tools that people who are not in the best of phases of life, feeling broken, or going through some hard times, maybe depression, maybe health challenges. Uh, what would be your advice? How should they go about
So
it?
there are a whole lot of tools, but you can't do 100, 200 things, interventions that are available. What works best for you, but what worked best for me, I can vouch for it. If you consistently build winning habits into a ritual, they will help. So some of them, I think meditation is a very powerful intervention, a very powerful mindfulness tool. That is one thing. I would say deep breathing, exercises of different types. But building a relationship with yourself is very, very
वो
important.
सिखाओ ना कैसे करते हैं.
So it is like I think with self awareness that happens, and self awareness ka first step is Meditating is a very heavy word. But if you take it in a simple word, sitting with yourself, however uncomfortable it is, with with yourself because you don't love yourself. You want others to make that discomfort go away. So you want something or the other. Sitting with yourself in solitude and just going inwards and just being there, you start going inwards and listening to that inner voice that's trying to tell you something, which we have made dormant completely. That's
Dormant kya? We do everything that we can to
silence that. So
whether it's through substances or whether it's through stimulation.
absolutely, we don't want a moment with ourselves.
Yeah.
So yes, so it is like when you start with meditation can be just a walk in the park where you are mindful of your movement, of your body, and now not in the present past, not in the future कि अरे बाबा क्या होगा, मैंने तो ये नहीं किया तो ये होगा, अब लाइफ में क्या होगा. Imagining the scenarios which have not happened, that is not life because that's not happening. Past is gone, so that is not life.
But we spend all of our thinking time either
Absolutely.
there or there.
So basically, meditation is nothing as simple as cutting that past and cutting that future. Just being in the present moment, one step at a time. That means 1 minute at a time, but consistently over and over, every day showing up. So when it is going to be very uncomfortable. You are going to be very restless. I have been very, very restless. Until today, I haven't had a perfect meditation of 20 minutes where I can say कि कोई thought नहीं आया. This never happened with me. I don't know if it happens with other people. So it is a consistency matters. One day you'll do it sit for 2 minutes where you could release a thought that came, and then 10 minutes, then 15 minutes, and it doesn't have to go beyond that. It can go beyond that. So it is like when that happens, you are cutting your past and your future, and you're being in that present moment. Even if it's not sitting in meditation, if you're eating something, you make a meal, a mindful meal, and you're looking at the food, appreciating it, you are enjoying the texture, you are being in the present moment. So these are different ways of being mindful and meditating. When you meditate, then you start becoming self-aware. When you start becoming self-aware, you realize that you have so much in your life that you are taking for granted. And then you start realizing you are on a hedonistic treadmill where you want, I want this, that, and all. And I need to prove here, I want to be perfect. Perfection is not there. And you miss out on the simple pleasures of life.
I think all change, all the efforts of, let's say, habit change or all kinds of change in life, they really begin with awareness. And I don't think if awareness is like, even let's say somebody has binge eating disorder or someone's smoking or constantly doing compulsive behavior of any kind. When you start paying attention to whatever you're doing,
that's a big
like
way.
You will, let's say, even if you drift, right? Let's say you love eating junk food and you have junk food in front of you. Usually what happens is we are stressed about something, and then when that favorite food arrives, we finish it off in like 10 minutes. And then in the evening, somebody would ask you, what did you eat? And what? And you'll say, oh, somebody brought in like 5 samosas and I ate. Like, you ate 5? Yeah, but why did you eat? I don't know what happened. Like, I don't even remember like properly. It just happened. But when you're paying attention and you're like savoring every bit of it, you might be done in one. Like, you'll not have two.
Totally, because you are in that moment.
Yeah.
So it's not, if you're not in that moment, it's not even registering. So
It's
you're
not
having
even
one after the other. So that presence, I don't say that I'm perfect and मैं गुरुजी बन गई हूँ कि मैं सब कुछ perfect कर रही हूँ. It's a journey, as I said. There's no destination in being mindful or being healthy. It's a constant journey, and you have to savor. So it's like I also have this relationship or a broken relationship with food which I'm mending. So on and off, it's like if I didn't get it in my childhood, so I want to, I sometimes feel I won't get it again, so I eat it now. But that awareness of that thought of how I think about my food has changed the way I eat. So it is like every moment that you are present in whatever you're doing will keep you self-aware, and that will help you change your habits.
Yeah, and
And the consistency, of course, of showing
absolutely.
up.
Yeah, and awareness, like meditation is a tool to
These
get
tools are
awareness.
definitely, if you just put them in place the first thing in the morning and end your day with journaling, gratitude journaling. And there's another type which is like morning pages or something where you are just brain dumping. But I'm talking about gratitude journaling. It is very therapeutic.
Yeah.
Just test it out. I can't talk enough of
Yeah.
what it's done to me. You have to test it out firsthand.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and it does release anxiety to a great, like when
Amazing.
you write it down in the morning, not just gratitude for sure
Morning
helps, but
pages.
even when you're like planning your day and
Yeah.
stuff like that, when you have stuff on the paper, it
You
changes.
offload it.
Absolutely, and your day goes better for sure.
Yes.
And you feel, because a lot of anxiety actually comes from like not the diagnosed anxiety, but the that
Hmm.
persistent
Hmm.
low grade anxiety time to
Monkey
time,
mind.
right? That and that really comes from uh not having a good awareness and feeling of not being in control,
Yes.
and feeling that there are so many uncertainties.
Yes.
Pata nahi kya hoga, and that could be around everything, like
Yeah.
and there are ways to fix it,
Yeah.
like you said, these tools are wonderful for that. Great. Is there anything that we've not covered and we should really talk about? Your books.
Ah.
What was the second one called?
Second is Raising a True Winner.
Give us some hooks from that book. Why should people
So
go check it out?
it is about, I've collated a lot of say interventions and tools and talking about communication, the right communication with your child, all out of my experiences and my clients, the mother clients' experiences. And of course, I've researched a lot. And based on that, I have spoken about what a child needs, whatever I didn't have. So it came intuitive, a part of it came intuitively to me, that all that I don't have, my child would need. So all those things I've put together, like the importance of effective communication, daily communication with your child, spending quality time. These are all cliches, but actually how it is to be done. I've put in a lot of examples in that book. And the nutrition bit, a little bit has been covered, but the first book has it in more detail. Then how the growth and development, what are the fundamental pillars and how you can go into them, how free play is so important, how you have to generally detach them from that gadget addiction. So all those things have been put in with live examples from my clients, from my own life, from other important examples. So everything together, that this is like what I think can make a parent a better person. I don't think I have it all, or this is a perfect book.
Sure.
But it lot of inputs helped me, and I have tried to collate them together in this book.
Okay. And you have a third book, Unfettered.
That is
right?
my baby, truly my baby, how I feel today. Unfetter has been my journey. And not only my journey, but also I've brought in some wonderful women who can, like the story in nutshell of some beautiful women, wonderful, brave women who could act as beacons of light to inspire other women who are going through, other people, not only women, who are going through tough phases. And one of the women there, the story is of your mom,
Yes.
Roshni ji. So amazing. So I have not only shared these stories to inspire people who are thinking, I cannot do anything, my life sucks. At the same time, I have a lot of tools put in that book, because that book covers all the important aspects, pillars of our life, not only nutrition or fitness. It talks about mindfulness, spirituality, all these tools of meditation, breathwork, how to do it, what are the, say, types, and then talking about soul goals. I would definitely end, or like, of course, soul goals, relationship with yourself, how to form that, how to change your mindset from the mindset of lack to abundance, and so much more. But what is important, and I think I would end the session with this, that you also have to know your soul goals. You have to discover your purpose of life. The moment I discovered that through these 2-3 years, transformative years, that has changed my life. It has made it very fulfilling. So there are external goals, but then the external goals will only help you externally. But if you want to feel fulfilled inside, happy and joyful, then you have to go inwards to discover your soul goals. Listen to what your soul is craving for. And once you get that, it becomes so much easier. You stop searching for happiness from all these things that may not be giving you happiness.
Yeah.
It's all temporary. Then you know your path, and it doesn't matter to you if somebody is not happy with you. So you know what gives you happiness.
Yeah.
And that is very important.
I've read the book, and I think it's the only book that you'll probably need. It has
Oh my
pretty much
God.
everything. Yeah.
You made my
As-
day. Thank you for
Yeah,
saying
as
that.
far
That's
as,
a big compliment.
Yeah, as far as health is concerned, this is very holistic in nature, and it's almost like a guidebook on
Yes.
what you really can do to live a more fulfilling life. And it has the bigger question as well. It's not just action based. It's also about purpose based, and it gives you like the soul goal that you talked about. It tells you how to arrive at all of those. The process is there. So wonderful. Before I ask my last question, please tell people where they can find you.
I have an Instagram page called I Tanuja Sodhi.
Okay.
And then I have a Facebook page called Wellness Hub by Tanuja Sodhi. And then I have an email called tanujasodhi@gmail.com. So
Sure.
I'm available.
Okay, wonderful. So my last question is, what's the mission that you're on?
So I'm very clear about my mission now than ever before. In my 50s, I've got that clarity. It's like I think I had a very broken life, and I put it together and made it whole piece by piece by piece. And now I think I've built a comprehensive toolkit with myself to heal myself from time to time. I will break again. I will have downfalls. I will fall down again. But I know how to get up every time I fall. So I have this comprehensive toolkit, and all the transformation I've gone through, I know my journey is to help others in their transformative journey. And I definitely, if not completely, but even if I listen to them, even if I coach them, I can help them with that. And this is my purpose, that I want to be a part of their transformative journey after having learned how to help my own self, physically, mentally, and emotionally, through a comprehensive toolkit that is holistic in nature.
Wonderful. Actually, this was a two-part question, and the second part you covered already, which was what's your mission and why do you care about it? So you've already shared why you care about it. Wonderful.
Yes.
I think this is good. I've enjoyed this conversation, and thank you for making time, Tanu.
Pleasure is all mine. I've loved talking about all this.
Yeah.
I've loved sharing my vulnerabilities, and it's always a pleasure meeting you and talking to you.
Thank you. And I'm so glad you've shared all of this so openly and honestly. And with all the like the number of times you've repeated, I'm not perfect, and this is all, it just brings about the honesty and humility you have. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.